I think I could make a compelling argument that technology is peaking. And that sounds weird because I know it's going to keep going. And there will probably be new explosive areas that become bubbles like the way AI has. And before that, self-driving cars. And before that, telematics. And before that, smartphones and so on. You actually can plot a chart for technology. And if you know enough about the Lego pieces, you can predict where it's going.
Welcome to High Agency, igniting conversations with inspiring people, leading transformative change. This episode is going to be a little on the nose. This podcast is called High Agency after all, and we're going to be talking mostly about cultivating and being high agency. High agency means taking initiative and responsibility to shape your own life and circumstances, rather than passively accepting them. It's this ability to identify what needs to be done and then taking the action to make it happen, even when faced with obstacles or ambiguity. It's the idea that life is something you create. It's not something that happens to you. And guess what? Founders tend to have high agency. Not all, but almost all. And people that are high agency are 2.6 times more likely to start multiple companies, regardless of whether the first venture succeeds or fails. And it's not about avoiding failure. In fact, today's guest nearly ran out of money multiple times, building 5 different companies. It's about seeing the opportunity where others see obstacles, despite the potential downsides. And it was during a trip to Indonesia, while others might have been complaining about dangerous, gas-guzzling motorcycles that were choking the streets, Jay Giraud envisioned something different. Intelligent, electric machines that could transform how billions move through the world. And that observation sparked Damon Motorcycles, his quest to revolutionize an industry that kills more people annually than malaria. From coffee shop manager to pro snowboarder to raising almost $200 million and taking companies public, Jay's journey defies the neatly organized origin stories of the founder with a dream. And we're going to explore how adversity forges entrepreneurs, why so many startups fail by solving the wrong problems, and what it really means to have the audacity to do the opposite of what's expected. So please welcome serial entrepreneur, inventor, and high agency poster child, Jay Giraud. Jay, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
No, I'm really happy to have you here. You had a pretty fascinating life, I think. We're going to get into it. But I want to start with the early life, because I feel like that's always a good place to learn what somebody's about, what motivates them, what their drivers were. And you built multiple companies, you raised a lot of capital, and you mentioned earlier when we were kind of chatting before this podcast that you're finding yourself on this sort of transitional path and you're looking to potentially launch in multiple different directions. But I want to start from like the first direction of Jay Giraud, young guy, just entering the world, trying to make things happen. And I want to maybe even start from your first job. You mentioned you were a coffee shop manager. And was that the first job? What came before? Where did Jay grow up?
So I grew up in North Vancouver in a little area called Lynn Valley. And I guess my teen years were the late 80s, early 90s. And pretty rough. Sounds ridiculous to talk about Vancouver as a rough place in comparison, I guess. But Lynn Valley was pretty rough. North Van was a pretty rough place, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So yeah, grew up there.
Define rough a little bit.
Well, I guess because Canadians aren't allowed to have guns, the street fights are a lot more nasty. Yeah. It's just like whatever you can get your hands on. So that kind of rough.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't think we have many of those associations with North Vancouver these days.
No, not at all.
So different place.
Yeah, I prepared my kids who are now both teenagers for like high school, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And they cannot relate. There's no bullying anymore. Like they've gotten rid of bullying in high schools, which blows my mind. For the most part, I'm sure it still happens now and then. Let alone street fights and incredible amounts of drug use and loose kids all over the streets with no parents and all of that I grew up with. So yeah, it was pretty rough.
Yeah, my neighborhood wasn't that rough, but I think there was, we're from the same generation. I think there was appreciation for being a little bit more like feral, I guess, in those years.
Yeah, it's good to be feral.
Yeah, and
You learn a lot about yourself.
That doesn't exist as much.
You don't get to be feral when you're being helicoptered.
So as a a feral child in North Vancouver, going into your teens,
Yeah.
you found yourself managing a coffee shop at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I was hungry for freedom and independence from a pretty young age.
Mhm.
So I was, delivering newspapers, several newspaper routes, and I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. In the middle of like grade 10, I had 3 part-time jobs during high school in grade 10. And, I was making cinnamon rolls when I was 14. And by the time I was running a coffee shop, I was probably on like job number 10 at that point. And so that was 18. So I dropped out of high school in grade 11 because I was very clear that nobody in my class wanted to learn anything. And it was so out of control in every classroom that it was a waste of time. And I will fight that point tooth and nail today, as I did at 17 years old, that it was no point being in high school because there was nothing to learn when nobody was calm and quiet and the teachers had no control. My mom didn't understand that, so she threw me out. And that forced me to turn my 3 part-time jobs into one job. So I ended up running running a grocery store at night. The foreman quit. The night crew foreman, who was like 45 years old, he quit suddenly and made me the foreman. So on minimum wage, I had to manage 3 people older than me. They were in their 30s and I was 17, and unload semis full of groceries and get them on the shelves between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And then go to a gas station and work from there for 6 hours after that. That's how I, went from out of high school to off the streets, because I was on the streets for a little while, to getting my shit together at 17. And that was before the coffee shop job.
Yeah. I mean, I was about to ask you why so much work, but I guess that kind of answers it, right? It was for survival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even before I was living on my own, I think I wanted a car. And I wanted to get away. And as soon as I had a car, I wasn't home for 2 months. It was amazing. It was a great summer.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, and I hope you don't mind me getting into this, it sounds like your mom wasn't exactly understanding what the school situation was, but for what you're describing now about what Lynn Valley was then, I imagine if it's such a rough place, then the school is probably just going to be a microcosm of that.
Totally. It's just a concentration for all the problems that the streets have, and you're better off not being there. So, but my mom, she had me and my older brother at the age of 16 and 19. So she had to drop out of high school. So she didn't get to finish high school. So, I didn't contemplate this at that moment, but that was a big deal. So she'd worked her literal ass off to have us be at school. And for me to throw that away, she lost the plot.
Yeah.
Understandably.
Yeah. Fair enough. What I'm curious about though is, like, how did you know it was supposed to be different? Like, if everybody in class is like making a ruckus and it's mostly just like, fighting and like acting out, like, why weren't you one of those?
Oh. Because I don't know. I mean, I didn't really like high school very much. Everyone knows grade 8, 9, and 10 don't count. So once I was in grade 11, I'm like, okay, I actually have to try now. And so it was the first time I was going from C's to like A's and B's, and I was actually trying, but the rest of the class still wasn't. So, yeah, I just like, okay, I'm not going to get good grades here. More importantly, it's a waste of time. I just concluded it was a waste of time. And I could go to adult night school. And I was around a group of people who, were already in alternative schools and adult night schools. So when I dropped out and I got the full-time job, I converted one of my part-time jobs to that graveyard job. The following semester, I enrolled myself in adult night school to get my grade 12. So I had 2 jobs plus adult night school, and it was night and day. I mean, everybody at adult night school was over 20. They're 20 to 30 years old. They were foreigners. They needed to get their GED or whatever.
So they're there to get going.
3-hour-long classes. And everybody was quiet, and it became a lot more enjoyable to be in an environment around other people that actually wanted to learn something.
And then at some point, you went through these multiple jobs, this sort of period of survival. Where did things kind of level off for you where you were able to say, okay, it's not just survival. I bought the car. I've got a couple of things under me, and now I want to kind of decide what to do next. When did that start showing up?
Well, I was making my rounds with different jobs inside of a mall. And when you work in a mall, you get to know all the managers of the other stores. So I kind of was hopping from one store to another. until I got to this coffee shop, and they wanted me to manage the location. I don't know why. They just needed a manager, and they trained me on that. So you're literally like filling in paper ledgers at the end of every day, and handwriting checks,
Paper ledgers.
doing the
Wow.
paper ledgers, and doing the calculator to figure out how much CPP you got to take off their paychecks and all that, and ordering supplies and bagels and coffee and all that kind of thing. And I got good at it. Like I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much that I'd lost track of what my plan was. Because when I was 14, I started snowboarding, and this was like before, some of the mountains didn't even allow snowboarders at this point. It was so early. But by 16, me and my best friend were committed to moving to Whistler after high school to become pro snowboarders. So we wanted to chase the dream of being pro riders. So like a year or so into running this coffee shop, and one day I was standing on a road in the middle of the winter, looking up at the mountains covered in fresh snow, and it hit me that I'd forgotten about my plan. So I promptly quit all my jobs and made a plan to move to Whistler. And I got hired at Starbucks and moved from managing the coffee shop to taking that experience to Starbucks, because they had a location in Whistler. This is the early 90s, or mid 90s. So Starbucks wasn't a giant thing yet.
Yeah.
But I thought, I bet I could get transferred, and that way just have a soft landing in Whistler. So I did that.
And the pro snowboarding, even before then, though, there was some recognition, because I don't think maybe there's just too much humility here, Jay. But when you're like, oh, I don't know, they just needed a manager. I mean, they obviously saw something in you.
Yeah, but I was 18.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and you know what? It's probably because I'd already been managing a crew of adults at the grocery store. So I had some management experience, I guess, at that point. Yeah.
And then at some point, though, somebody recognized something in the young Jay Giraud and said, we want to send this guy to Anthony Robbins.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that coffee shop chain, they were called Roastmasters. And there's still one in North Vancouver, one of the very first. And they wanted to rival Starbucks, and they were roasting organic coffee on site, which I loved. We were air roasting organic coffee. That was the differentiator. Starbucks wasn't giant yet. Like I said, it was big, but it wasn't giant. And so this guy really just wanted to train me for some reason. He kind of like had a thing for self-development, and that was kind of a newfangled thing in the mid 90s. And Anthony Robbins was young, getting big. And he sent me to this 3-day course here at BC Place, with Anthony Robbins, and walking over coals and all that kind of shit, hot coals. And so did that. And he also put me to like this memory seminar, and he was paying for me to go to these things.
I mean, the reason why I focus in on that is because, I think these are kind of odd business decisions, right? When you have a small coffee shop and you have an 18-year-old running the place. Yeah. I mean, that seems to be
weird.
A lot of like...
I didn't think it was weird then. I was just cool with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think somebody's taking an interest, so hold it.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of investment into professional development for that.
Yeah, it was like,
role.
I think it was like $3,000 that Tony Robbins thing at the time. It wasn't cheap. It was more than I was being paid, like a lot more. So, yeah.
And did any of that experience factor into you looking up the mountain one day and being like, "Oh shit, I forgot about this, and I wanna get back on the mountain"?
I guess I just took it for what it was and did it, enjoyed it, and that definitely set me on a course of self-development. I started reading all the Tony Robbins books and buying kind of the peripheral books, the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People and The Road Less Traveled, and all those things that were, I don't know if you know those books, but they were all big back then.
Yeah.
Tim Collins and everybody. And so I was kind of gobbling those up as I was now chasing my dream in Whistler, to be a pro rider, to get sponsors. When I applied to Whistler Blackcomb, it was Blackcomb at the time, to the snowboard school manager, I told him I wanted to compete in the Olympics, and the Olympics was still forthcoming, the very first Olympics. And I'd also taken actually kind of designed the snowboard freestyle coaching program in Canada with Cassie, which was the organization in Canada. So me and the guy that ran Cassie designed the first freestyle snowboard coaching program, which goes beyond like the level 2 instruction. And so I kind of told the snowboard instructor that, and instead of being put on the bottom teaching beginners, he put me on the top coaching freestyle snowboard youth. And so for the next 3 years on weekends, instead of, dealing with people falling on the bunny hill, we were all over British Columbia doing competitions and, in the backcountry and building jumps and, sessioning in the half pipe, and I got paid to ride. So that was pretty awesome.
And then why'd you stop? I mean, it sounds like a huge passion area.
Yeah. from about 20 to 26, 27. So I amassed, at my peak, I amassed 11 sponsors, started making some money in, getting in the cover of magazines and into videos, and that kind of media coverage is kind of how we paid for our way. And they pay for me to go to some trips, some flight costs and all that kind of thing. And I was kind of known as the cat among people in Whistler, because if you throw a cat in the air and it looks bad, they're scrambling and everything, they still somehow land on their feet. So even if things didn't go well off the lip of the jump, I somehow would always land on my feet. Until I wasn't, until, not enough maintenance of the body and things that don't stretch properly. And suddenly you're not landing on your feet and you start getting some injuries, and those injuries started to compound. So by 26, 27, it was, not like I had a peak of about 2.5 years, 3 years. The big one was a knee injury that resulted in a surgery, but it took 1.5 years for them to properly diagnose it. So for 1.5 years, I kept trying to go back into competition, and I would have another recurring injury didn't know I had a fully torn ligament. So when you land on your feet, but not perfectly, you're collapsing. And so there was 1.5 years of just trying to get back on my feet, figuratively speaking, in the pro arena, and I wasn't able to until I finally got that surgery. And at that point, like, a lot of time had passed and kind of just lost my ranking. Mm-hmm. So nothing lasts forever.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, especially something that takes, such a toll on your body, right? Because it's pretty hard on the body.
Yeah. Been working on it for 30 years since.
And you were pretty early days, because snowboarding had just kind of exploded on the scene, and then suddenly there was Olympics coverage.
Yeah.
I forget the guy's name, but there was like a very famous snowboarder from here. There was like a
lot of famous snowboarders from here,
but it was the one with like the pot scandal.
Ross Rebagliati. So he was a racer.
Okay, he was a racer.
So different category altogether. And racing never blew up. Like there were no racing celebrities, probably other than him. And that was maybe as much because of the Olympics as because of the pot.
It was entirely because of the pot scandal, for sure. Yeah.
I don't know. Racing's cool, but like racing is, I don't know if anyone even races snowboards anymore, other than bordercross. Mm-hmm. This was Gates. Gates was a thing very temporarily, which was really borrowed from skiing. Mm-hmm. That's not what snowboarding's about.
Yeah. So you're in your mid late 20s now. You've beat the shit out of your body sufficiently. Yeah, you're like, okay, let's try to do something else.
Yeah.
And what was motivating you at the time? What were you looking at?
So I've recently, 2 days ago, put up a post on my Instagram that I've just completed my second chapter in my life. And so at the transition from snowboarding to what was next was the end of my first chapter. I didn't call it that then, but I do now. I do see now my life
looking
chapters.
back on it.
Yeah. So that was the end of my first chapter. Snowboarding was a chapter. And at the end of that, I ended up building a women's snowboard clothing company with an ex-girlfriend, which if anybody's listening and wants to know if that's a good idea, it's not. When you got all that past tension, don't build a business with an ex. But we thought it was a good idea. And we ended up getting all these women on board as sponsored athletes in skiing, mountain biking, and snowboarding that all ended up winning gold medals a few years later. All of them. So we had this incredible roster of soon to become huge talent.
Wow.
And we had great product. We had a great brand. We just didn't know what the hell we were doing from a startup perspective. And we had a lot of tension that was definitely problematic. So we ran a clothing company for a few years, making women's snowboard clothing. Well, it's action sports clothing. And the distinction was that women were wearing men's snowboard clothing because it was way higher quality. And all the women's snowboard clothing was always made cheap, didn't have the good waterproofing, didn't have good designs. Mm-hmm. So any really good rider in snowboarding or skiing was wearing men's clothing. So we kind of took that and designed really high quality gear. Got it into a number of stores around, Canada and the US. And eventually that died. And it wasn't until I took the Landmark Forum in 2005, which was kind of the next phase of my self-development, that really, really set me into a different direction in life. Mm-hmm. So I guess, honestly, Gage Clothing was kind of the wrap-up of that first chapter.
Got it.
And that a few years.
And that died because of market change, or you guys just couldn't?
We ran out of money.
Yeah.
And we weren't raising, we were just doing it on credit cards and lines of credit, and we didn't raise outside capital.
Wow.
Yeah, And this was kind of you couldn't sell stuff online yet. This was like 2002. So there was no social media yet. And so you're still packing up, $12,000 worth of samples and driving from store to store trying to land dealers. And so it was hard.
So
clothing's way easier to sell now than it was back then.
Oh yeah, and that's why we have explosional micro brands and
Totally.
the rest of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting what you said about chapters. So like looking back, you can now kind of label the chapters. So you went through the Landmark Forum, and it wasn't apparent to you at the time, but was it pretty soon after that you were starting chapter 2?
Yeah, probably. I wouldn't have called it a chapter, but yeah, it was definitely a big change. So at the end of doing a couple of courses in landmark education, I realized that what I really wanted to do was to help make the world a better place by getting the world of vehicles to go from gas to electric.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually really hated cars and thought that they're really inefficient and they don't make sense. And, you're moving around 5,000 to 6,000 pounds to move one person. Like it's just, and the rest of the world actually doesn't work that way, which we'll get to.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted cars to be electric, and I realized that they could be electric now. That there was no reason why they couldn't. And this is before Elon was in Tesla. But the true founders of Tesla, they too understood this.
Yep.
And they were using existing technology to make cars electric, to make their car electric. So that led me to founding Rev Technologies, making electric SUVs and pickups. And I was at the time selling cars because I was selling motorbikes for about 2 years and I was very, very good at it. And I went to selling cars because I was told to make more money, and I was miserable. Like migraine headaches for 4 months straight, and I'd never had headaches before.
How is it that different?
People buy motorbikes because they want to. People buy cars because they have to.
Oh, wow.
So you're selling a passion versus selling a need.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're 20, I don't know what I was, 28, 29, trying to explain to somebody why this is better for their babies, and you're a single dude, I don't give a shit about the seat locks for the restraints for the baby carrier at 29 years old. So pretty hard to be passionate about it.
Yeah, not the most authentic experience.
No, it wasn't exactly. And everyone's always said to me my entire life that I can sell anything. And the truth is I can only sell what I really care about. Mm-hmm. And I know some people can sell anything. Mm-hmm. They just want to sell. I have to really care about what I'm selling.
Got it.
So purpose and passion matter to me.
So at that point, though, you recognize something and you're like, okay, I want to change people's relationship to energy.
Yeah, you know about that, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah, I've been creeping you for a while.
Yeah.
In the lead up to the podcast. And so, but it's interesting that you recognize it at that point, because like there's still a debate in some circles around, EV or internal combustion engine.
There's a lot of debate still.
Yeah. And, I was watching this interview with Rory Sutherland from Ogilvy, and he had this amazing way of kind of a thought experiment of kind of breaking that analysis and breaking that debate. Because he said, if one had been introduced before the other, how would you sell the other? Right? So we have EVs and now, we have internal combustion engine, and we're trying to sell EVs, and we're debating the validity of EVs. He's like, what if EVs had come first? Mm-hmm. And somebody came along and said, that really clean thing that you drive that accelerates fast and moves well and does all these other things? Well, we want to replace it with this thing that is going to be, churning out pollution, requires hundreds more moving parts and maintenance. So we have to set up supply chains and massive industries to just even maintain this thing and keep it going. It's going to provide a worse driving. Anyways, he was listed everything off.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. And he's like, would you be able to sell it? And it was like, actually, you wouldn't. Right. So the only thing.
But you get to tinker on it and build it yourself and change it and mod it your own way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would probably be a niche thing.
It would be a very niche thing
for people that want to still tinker. And that's what it will be.
Yeah.
I mean, you could still buy records,
mm-hmm.
right? But it's a niche thing now.
Very niche.
It was mainstream. Now it's niche.
Yeah.
So I actually have concluded with technology, and I find this pretty interesting. A lot, maybe not all technology, but a lot of technology never really dies.
Mm-hmm.
It just finds a place to continue to live in a niche.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, the horse-drawn plow is gone. Well, maybe not. Probably farms that still use the horse-drawn plow, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing really ever dies. It just kind of carries on in another place.
Yeah. And so the only thing that internal combustion engines really have going for them beyond that is that they're the incumbent, right?
Right.
And
then
so
incumbents are very hard to displace.
Yeah. But you decided to try.
Yeah. Yeah, naivety goes a long way. Like it really does. I just spent an hour before this with a founder with a business in the mobility space, a hardware company. And he comes from urban planning, which was actually fascinating because whenever you meet a startup or a founder, if they don't have a compelling why and a compelling why now and a unique insight that really explains the business that they're in, it's sure to die. But this person has no founder experience, no startup experience, no fundraising experience. He comes from urban planning, which is, bureaucratic and governmental and structured, and, you check out at 4:30. Like, this does not jive to the makeup of a founder. Yet he's got a compelling thing that he has unique perspective on, which is the way cities are made, and he's created a product that solves the problem of movement within cities. So I think he's actually got a really hot thing that could be really successful. So,
but he's got the why and the why now.
Yeah.
And so,
but he's got all the naivety is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And that naivety allows him to move forward. If he knew what I know, if he could experience what I've experienced, I don't think he'd want to start a startup.
There's a curse of knowledge that I think enters in when you have too much information sometimes, right?
Totally. Or too much scar tissue.
Yeah. I mean, and we've had conversations on this couch as well where many people say, if they knew everything, if they actually knew the landscape, they probably wouldn't even start because it's so overwhelming to know all that.
Young, naive men sign up to go to the army all the time. Veterans don't.
Wow.
Yeah.
Naivety.
Right? Like, it's no veteran wants to go back into the army because they know what it's like. And they're like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. Yeah. I think startup life is brutal. And if you knew how much you'd sacrifice and give up, it would not have any allure. So naivety is a beautiful thing. It allows us to go after big dreams.
So how much of that naivety factored into like Rev or
entire?
Yeah.
You have an idea. So at some point between Gage Clothing and Rev Technologies, I'd had so many business ideas and startup ideas, and I'd seen quite a few of them come to life somewhere else in the world and be very successful. You get so sick and tired of kicking yourself for not chasing your own idea. Then I realized that if you get an inspired idea and you feel it, when it's an inspired idea because you get excited, you start telling everybody, and then it starts to sound crazy and it kind of fizzles out, or you get intimidated by it, or you don't know where to start. So these ideas kind of die off in our minds. But if you get the idea, it was given to you for a reason. And I don't know what you believe in or where your faith comes from, but it comes from something, and it was given to you, and it becomes your responsibility to bring that idea forth into the world. So, would I have preferred to get a B2B SaaS idea? Totally. Be a lot easier than building an electric vehicle company in Vancouver of all places. But that was my idea, and so I had to pursue it.
And how'd that go?
Good until it went bad.
All right.
So it didn't really go bad. It just, I didn't ever raise venture capital for it, but we got our first customer in 4 months, which was the province of BC, converting Priuses to plug-in hybrid with a drive system that we purchased, but we still had to engineer it to fit in the Prius. That was crazy. I didn't appreciate then how amazing that was to be in revenue in 4 months in an EV business.
With a government contract. That's incredible.
With a government contract. Yeah. And that led to a BC Hydro contract right after that, which led to a Burlington Hydro contract in Ontario, which anyway. And with that capital, I was able to immediately turn it over and invest in the development of some Ford Rangers and Ford Escape that were totally electric with our own proprietary drive system that we developed that retrofitted the gas engine and transmission of an existing Ford vehicle. So we did Ranger and F-150 and an Escape as prototypes, and we actually commercialized the Escape, which was an SUV. Should have been a pickup, but anyway, and found military and municipal and utility customers in the U.S. with a couple of prototypes that we then started to drive around all over the United States on the back of a trailer.
That seems to me like you had very quickly and early done all the hard stuff, right? Like you're talking about actually having like the hardware figured out. You've got government contracts going. You've got revenue figured out. Why did it go badly? What happened?
So the revenue was great, but we thought we could get to a $50,000 price point for the package that would convert a customer's existing Ford Escapes from gas to electric. In reality, they were $180,000. So the market shrunk real fast. Mm-hmm. At $50,000, I could have had hundreds of utility and municipal customers in North America. At $180,000, everybody was buying one. Not everybody. A few were buying one. City of Santa Monica, Burlington Hydro, the DOD. It was
more as like a conceptual storytelling
PG&E
thing.
Well, they were using them as proof that they were doing something green.
Yeah.
So there were greenwashing, and there was real intent. I think if they were more affordable, they'd want more than one. But and they had all these, few higher income municipalities and utility companies were able to buy one and integrate it into their utility infrastructure, test time of day charging, test load, things that they were predicting were going to be major problems if suddenly a whole bunch of EVs hit the markets, which took way longer than they thought. But that was the reason to buy one or to buy four in the case of the DoD. But that was not scalable. There's nothing scalable about that. And the drive system worked, but it didn't work great.
Yeah.
We needed tens of thousands of miles of data, probably hundreds of thousands of miles of data to work out all the bugs in the inverter and in the throttle mapping and these kinds of things that made it a reliable enough vehicle for people to buy tens or hundreds. So what we were doing was really, in effect, just not scalable.
Yeah. And pretty small customer base when people are only just buying them for the concept, right?
Yeah. At $180,000. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when and how did you decide to let it go? When did you say, okay, we've done the ride and not viable?
Yeah, well, a lot changed between 2008 and 2012. So gas prices went through the roof. In 2008, we had peak gas prices in North America, and that was really wind on our backs, which was great. But in 2012, natural gas prices fell 15x in March of 2012. And so the kind of customer, municipal or fleet customer, who would turn a vehicle from gas to electric, well, they had already done hundreds of vehicles from gas to natural gas. So natural gas prices fell so much, it didn't make sense to blow 5-6 figures on an EV conversion when they could just, blow 4 figures on a natural gas conversion, and their natural gas costs were way less than the conventional gas costs. So that kind of killed our market overnight. We'd also just gone through the mortgage crisis in 07, 08, 09. So a lot of municipalities were really, really struggling. And it just was very clear to me this wasn't scalable. And by 2012, we had China, the USA, and some other European countries committed to 1 million EVs on the road from actual manufacturers. So, in 06, General Motors killed off the EV1. Maybe it was a little earlier than that. But by 2012, there were something like 300 EV companies, including Tesla, Fisker, and a whole bunch of companies that we all know have died now, and some that made it. So suddenly, converting cars from gas to electric just didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, because all these companies were going to do it from the ground up.
Exactly.
Yeah,
with billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good incentive, I'd say, to pack up and go home at that point.
Yeah.
And then what'd you do next after that?
So at the time, we were also integrating our EVs. So we had 4 in an army base in Hawaii. We had 4 in a test bed with the Pentagon in the Detroit area in Michigan, and they were actually being used as mobile battery banks. So we could see on a cloud interface that we built, we could see the energy stored in all the vehicles and the available capacity, and we could feed that energy back into the market, into the wholesale power market, to balance supply and demand. So it's called vehicle to grid. And that required telematics connection that we developed. So we had a cloud, we had the telematics connection, and we wanted to scale that, which was going to be largely a software play. So we were hacking into Chevy Volts and Nissan Leafs, electric cars that were now available from dealers, and seeing how we could scale turning your car into a generator to back up your home or to absorb power from the roof. And that telematics platform, we then saw if your car in the driveway was internet connected, there's actually like 200 things you could do with that were valuable. And this is going to need a scalable platform where anybody could build an app for any car. And that led to me founding Mogio. So I pivoted Rev to Mogio. I carried the software component from Rev to Mogio. I gave all my shareholders in Rev free stock in Mogio. And 3 months after killing Rev, Mogio was born.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a crazy pivot.
Now, isn't that the SaaS platform you wanted, though?
Yeah, Mogio is a SaaS platform. It's a hardware-enabled SaaS platform. So Mogio now is in 9 countries around the world.
Wow.
And it's been running for 13 years.
And are you still involved with Mogio? Or?
No, I was the CEO, founder and CEO for about 5 years. Took it through to Series B, raised, 25-30 million for it, and got it into a couple of wireless carriers, and then brought Deutsche Telekom on as our Series A lead. We also brought in investment from Amazon and Microsoft and some incredible Bosch. And then T-Mobile came in as the first customer. Deutsche Telekom scaled it in 5 or 7 countries in Europe. It sounds like it was easy. Took 4 years to get product market fit and to get traction because there were so many things you could do with an internet connected vehicle that like what's the beachhead use case? Yeah, actually, that was really, really hard to nail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hearing you describe it again, this is hindsight. You're listing off countries and names of like, massive like Fortune 500s.
Yeah, we had so many.
Yeah. And getting to that fit, it sounds like it was probably one of those, sounding like a overnight success story of
Right.
You're killing yourself for years, and then finally the thing clicks and it goes.
Yeah.
But once the company found its footing and started growing, you mentioned that you were CEO for 5 years. Why'd you move on from there?
So Deutsche Telekom led the Series A, and they wanted to grow hard in Europe. They loved it. Like I pitched the board members and the CEO and chairman. Like it was crazy that I got that opportunity. But 6 weeks later, we had a term sheet for the Series A, and which, by the way, is a bad idea. We'll get to that in a second. But you don't always get competing term sheets. You take what you get. It's that or run out of money. And Deutsche Telekom wanted to grow it hard in Europe, and that would require me to spend almost 50% of my time in Europe. And I had young kids here in Vancouver, so I just couldn't be away. So we wanted to find a growth CEO that would help scale it in Europe, who was willing to spend time or had experience. So we found a guy who actually had worked with Vodafone in Europe for a number of years. So already had telecom experience, understood the landscape and the way to sell to these kind of partners. And so he was the perfect guy to grow the company.
And why is a term sheet in 6 weeks? Why is that such a bad idea?
No, there's nothing wrong with a term sheet in 6 weeks. But so if you're raising money you got financial investors. Financial investors' motive is to sell the company, right? Or take it public, right? To get a return. Strategic investors' motive is almost never to sell the company. It's to benefit their existing business. So they don't really have motive to sell the company or to monetize their investment. So if it gets 5x or 100x return, that's nice, but it's not why they're investing.
Because that's just going to sit on their books anyways. So
totally. Yeah. So, and in a Series A, a lead will take 25, 35%, which is decision-making power and control. Whereas in a Series B, a strategic might take 2 to 10%, which is not, control. So once Deutsche Telekom came in the Series B, that brought in Bosch, Trend Micro, Amazon again, BDC again, which is kind of a strategic for the government of Canada, T-Mobile, TELUS Ventures. They all invested in the Series B. So suddenly the company is invested in and controlled by a whole bunch of strategic investors who have no exit desires. So 13 years later, Mojo is still a private company. Probably should have gone public by now or been bought or been acquired by now by maybe Bosch, one of its major strategic partners. And so I've got all these shareholders who are all locked up. And so
there's no liquidity event coming.
There's no liquidity event. I don't think there ever will be. Great company, but I don't think there'll ever be a liquidity event for the shareholders, which is not why we all do this ultimately.
Yeah. Fair enough. So you saw the writing on the wall with Mojo and said, okay, there's no liquidity event coming.
Well, I didn't see the writing on the wall then.
Oh, you didn't?
But, maybe I did, because there was a Series B, a secondary round, and I sold more than half my stock then. So actually, me and some other people got an exit through a secondary round, which was great. But a lot of people just didn't take that window of opportunity, and there hasn't been one since. Yeah.
And then was it because you were now enticed by something new, or
totally
you got bored, or?
Well, I didn't have the idea for Damon right off the bat. I actually tried to resurrect my friend's company doing a co-presence video, which, oh my God, would have been huge if I'd known COVID was coming.
If anybody had known COVID was coming.
Oh, man. But that company was saddled with too many problems with its previous shareholder base. Yeah. So I tried to resurrect that with him for about 6 months. I loved it. I'm still passionate about it. Like, I'm not even going to explain how it works, because I think still, maybe I'll do it one day. It would be revolutionary in offices today. But then I went out to Indonesia for my best friend's wedding, and was totally excited to ride motorbikes with a whole bunch of other bikers. When you're riding around on a bike in, a North American city, you just wish all the other cars were bikes. And as soon as you do it in real life, you're like, this is a nightmare. It's not awesome.
I rode motorcycles in Punjab, India.
Yeah.
So I've fully got the experience.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And you get used to the crazy, which is the really crazy part, is how much you just like, wow, I'm just going with the flow. It's like a flock of birds. And sometimes birds bump into each other, right? They do.
Yeah.
But you just carry on. And I kind of love that chaos, but it's not like riding a motorbike here. It's very much just get from A to B and try to survive, as opposed to doing it for the enjoyment. Yeah. So kind of had that experience and came away honestly thinking, could you make motorbikes move in a controlled manner like a flock of birds using software, using like self-driving software? That's where the idea began.
I wasn't aware of that. That's actually fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it makes me think of what are they? The starlings. They kind of have like murmurations, where like like millions of them will move as like one body, but they're not actually colliding. They're just so in tune with each other. They're able to move.
They're somehow consciously or unconsciously communicating with each other, and they become a single body. And if you've ever been on a motorbike riding alone, and you suddenly catch up to say 5 other bikes, you don't know who they are, but you catch up to them and they're riding information, and suddenly you all move information, and it just happens. So it happens with humans too. Maybe there's other examples in some sport where you join with a group of other people doing that sport and you suddenly start to move like one unit without communicating with them. It happens, and it's a really cool feeling. And so I kind of thought, could we make vehicles do that? Like a coordinated convoy. So they're doing this with platoons of trucks now, autonomous trucks, but they're just in line. They're not moving like a flock. They're moving in line.
Pretty linear. Yeah,
it's pretty linear. So, a lot simpler.
And so you got this inspiration of getting motorcycles in Indonesia moving like a flock of birds.
Right. Well, you start with crazy and you work your way to doable.
Yeah.
I think every idea starts at crazy. And you work your way back to like, what's doable? What's the MVP? If you're following a process, like a discipline, you want to get to an MVP. What can I get to market now? Or fast.
And was it that immediate for you? Like, did you see it and be like, okay, this is the crazy, I'm going to go figure out the doable? Or what happened after that? Well,
you dabble in crazy for a while. You think about it, you process it, you do some research, and you start getting more and more ideas. And eventually, I was like, okay, so it's kind of like LiDAR, radars, and cameras are the tools here that we're going to need. Of course, we're going to need really fast processing. Is it edge? Is it on board? Is it localized? Is it cloud? How are you going to process that kind of data? What kind of data processing volume are you going to be required? How do you do it in damn near real time? Like, you need kind of 20 milliseconds tops.
And the answer is lots of everything that you just said.
Right. Yeah. The answer was so much more complex. And we didn't even have enough processing power that you could stick in the back of a car back then, let alone on a motorbike. So, crazy still sits in the world of crazy right now. And we concluded that cameras and radars were where it's at. But we played with LiDAR. So when we finally launched Damon, the first goal was to make motorcycling safer. And a lot of people have tried. And I would meet almost every investor would say, well, what about helmets? What about doing it in your helmet? What about yellow vests? What about I would love it if a thing beeped on my dashboard to let me know that motorbike is coming up behind me. Yeah, that shit doesn't work. And I could get into why. We actually did start by thinking we could resurrect Scully. Scully was a motorcycle helmet company out of Silicon Valley that had a little heads-up display with some built-in processing and stuff. And there's reasons why I believe it's still not appropriate to do it in a helmet. Heavy battery life problems. Like if you're running a safety system, you're going to change your riding behavior to adapt to that system. You can't have it work sometimes. So imagine driving a car where sometimes blind spot works in the car and sometimes it doesn't. You're glancing over at the mirror and you're like, okay, you're working right now, or did the battery die inside the mirror? Like you can't do that. If it's going to change your behavior, it has to work 1,000% of the time. Otherwise it becomes intermittent. And so we concluded then to not do it in a helmet, had to be on board the vehicle. And by the time I was there with the fact that it had to be on board the vehicle, I had a pretty strong hunch from my previous 2 automotive companies that we would have to build the whole vehicle.
There, on the technology end, it's fascinating though, because you mentioned LiDAR. Tesla famously made a engineering commitment to actually never use LiDAR.
Yeah, which may have been a mistake at this point in hindsight.
Yeah,
but they didn't think so then.
Yeah.
But LiDAR's come a long way. Cost has come way down. 4D LiDAR, the resolution is insane now. It was pretty bad in 2016 compared to now. But it still needs line of sight. So there's really nowhere to put LiDAR on a motorbike except on the top of the rider's helmet in order to have 360 line of sight. Or you've got disparate LiDAR front and back. Yep. But yeah, bunch of reasons why LiDAR wouldn't have worked back then and probably still isn't the right solution for a motorbike now.
So you started off with Damon being this like AI, incredibly data intensive safety system initially. And then that company kind of morphed and pivoted.
Yeah. Like we spent, like no kidding, we spent 3 years trying to commercialize these prototype collision warning systems that we developed: forward collision, rearward collision warning, and blind spot, and camera in the back, camera in the front, radar front and back, and then processing on board. Even camera needed a fair bit of processing, but not a ton. And that we took to Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, Ducati, a whole bunch of other, Hero. I met the chairman of Hero in India, presented it to them, saw the factory, dozen other motorbike companies, Royal Enfield, like the list goes on. And then nobody bit down into, like, we actually presented it on a track in Cantil, California at the proving grounds of Honda America for 3 days in 2018. And like, OEMs move slow. This was what I already knew. OEMs move incredibly slow. If you go elephant hunting, you're probably going to starve. And that's what happens to way too many companies who think that they can sell to a tier one in the auto industry or to an OEM. You're going to run out of money before you get a commercial contract. And that has happened far more times than it's been successful. So I was pretty clear that this was going to be futile, but you have to validate it and prove it. And you've got stakeholders who don't want you to build the whole vehicle because that's going to be super capital intensive. That's got its own risks.
Yeah, that's a whole other company.
Yeah, it's a whole other company. But long story short, by the end of 2018, we knew we had to make that pivot. And we spent 2019 building a prototype. And we brought it to CES in January 2020, and it exploded.
Incredible.
Until COVID came in 2 months later.
Yeah, fair enough.
So that explosion was short-lived.
Yeah.
2 months. Yeah, we crawled on hands and knees, like almost having to suck gas out of somebody else's vehicle to fuel ours to get the prototype to California. Like at this point, nobody had gotten a salary for 3 months. Like none of our small engineering team, we were all working for free for 3 months to make it to CES in January 2020. On the hopes that we could launch our own crowdfunding campaign to get orders in on our own website. We thought about Indiegogo and all that, concluded we needed the data to build, a successful recurring pre-order campaign on our website. So we did it internally on our own site, hacking Wi-Fi from CES to try to do live Instagram and live Facebook that we were unveiling this motorbike. The unveil was so popular on opening day of CES that we started to do the unveil 3 times a day for 4 days. We thought we were doing it once. We did it 3 times a day. We were live on Facebook and Instagram three times a day for 4 days. And at the end of the 4 days, we had $1 million in orders with like deposits. And we were in the BlackBerry booth because we were using their software as the backbone, the QNX software. But cool fluke, we were right beside the Honda booth. And every time we unveiled the motorbike, we showed it transforming, and we ripped the rear wheel, and people would get near it, and the handlebars would vibrate from the radars bouncing off their bodies. 200 people standing in the Honda booth would empty 3 times a day and again to come around our booth. Yeah. It was super cool.
Honda must have loved that.
Yeah, they loved it. What we learned about it was all the show and tell concepts you see at CES, virtually never are they real. They're literally being faked in some way or another. And what was so exciting about our prototype, besides being the only motorbike there, was it was real.
You showed up
you could see the wear on the tires. Like I'd ridden that bike all over Vancouver.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was cool.
And so Damon Motorcycle obviously got to a point, and then COVID introduced all sorts of its own complications.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah. And so where's that company headed now? Where are you headed now?
So Damon grew to, ended up raising $85 million for it, got over $100 million in orders, built up patent book of 40 patents across the end-to-end spectrum of the technology. I rode it at several racetracks all over the U.S. I mean, doing close to 200 miles an hour in some cases on it, and took it public on the NASDAQ in late last year.
That was you doing 200 miles an hour?
In some of the pictures. Well, we did 200 miles an hour on dynos. We didn't find a track in the U.S. where you could do 200 miles an hour. And I don't have the balls to do 200 miles an hour, but I think the fastest I've ever gone in my life was 276 kilometers an hour, which is, 160. It's pretty fast. Well, 180? I don't know what it's fast. But I haven't broken 200 miles an hour myself. You need to be an incredible rider with an amazing braking ability, because at the end of a front straight is a very sharp corner. So when guys can do 200 miles an hour, they can brake like gods.
I mean, I wasn't even thinking about the speed. I was just thinking about like the legal counsel, the investors, the risk. Oh. You got like the CEO and founder like ripping down the road.
If you're going to be a motorcycle CEO, you better be authentic.
Yeah.
You better be able to ride your own, eat your own dog food.
Mm-hmm. So you, so Damon grew to a point, and then you exited at some point. So
Yep. Took it public on the NASDAQ, and now my co-founder is running the company, trying to push it down into more of an asset light model. They've got a few focuses on the software and getting into racing and eventually commercializing the vehicle, I guess. I think we encountered enormous challenges. We had a very short window where there was enough money to really build this properly. And I don't know, like 1,000 investor groups, big VCs, honestly said, I think you'd have an easier time raising money for a car company than a motorbike company. And there's a weird irony in that, because you need billions to build a car company, but everyone can understand the need for a car, like whether it's a self-driving car or whatever. Very, very few people understand the need for a motorbike. And so people say, okay, well, you should be raising your money out on the other side of the world where motorcycling is the norm, not driving. Yes, but and we presented to many of those investor groups, and we did get some pretty big investment out of Indonesia, but they don't want the 200 horsepower superbike. They want
like scooter plus.
Yeah, like $1,000 motorbike. Yeah. And there's no room for innovation on $1,000 motorbike. You can't differentiate. You virtually can't differentiate. Go raised a ton of money, but they crashed because of how hard it is to be competitive at the $1,000 price point.
Well, it's
an oxymoron, you know? So we needed to be the Tesla model, start with the Roadster and go down market to a mass market vehicle.
Yeah, totally.
And even then you can't go that far down as we're learning, because what is it? The Tesla Model 2 is going to be a Y. Like, ta-da! It's the same vehicle.
Yeah,
it's not a $30,000 car.
No.
And even Elon learned that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's price point as much as it is culture, right? Because I mean, I was joking when I say scooter plus, but like, in Asia, motorcycles are A to B things, and if somebody could strap a lawnmower engine to a piece of cardboard and get it done, they would
for $200.
Yeah, and they do,
and they do. They really do. A lawnmower engine to a piece of cardboard.
Yeah,
as long as it's got wheels, it'll go, and you'll get from A to B. Yeah. The successful company, what's it called? Well, modestly successful. Forgot their name now, but they got like 1 million unit orders for an EV scooter overnight. And they went public at like a $2 billion val in India, and they're just crashing right now. Like, I don't think they're going to survive. And, they've got the most affordable EV electric scooter with 1 million order book, or greater than that probably. They've shipped tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and they're still struggling in India. Like, they've got all the right ingredients. It's still really hard.
Yeah.
So took Damon public on the NASDAQ, left handed the reins to my co-founder, and that was the end of chapter 2 for me. So now looking back, all right, chapter 1 was snowboarding. Chapter 2 was EVs and mobility. And now chapter 3 is me being more of a founder whisperer. So my goal now is to work and deliver high touch and eventually high impact coaching and mentorship and guidance to founders who are on their first or second venture.
And, with the experiences that you've had, how do you kind of balance the curse of knowledge that comes with that, right?
The curse of knowledge?
Yeah. Knowledge is a curse when there's too much of it, right? Yeah. You mentioned like when I look back at even my own life in many categories, it's like, it was actually the ignorance that fueled me. Right?
Totally. The
naivety.
Yeah.
And so how do you balance the fact that you've got a shit ton of experience and knowledge, and like you wear the scars for
the rest of your life?
Yeah. and working with that, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed new founder who's got the idea, like, does cynicism ever kind of creep into that?
Oh, is that what you're getting at? Yeah, totally it does. Yep. Yeah, that's a really interesting one to unpack. I've been recently spending quite a bit of, honest, like, wandering around nowhere reflection time. Like, I mean it, like, just going off into the woods and trying to deal with some cynicism, because, some of the mistakes you make that you can't stop dwelling over, you really do curse you. And like, how do you not pass that on to that other founder that you're going to coach is kind of the question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, recently I think I've been getting back to being a little too optimistic. Like, I was, as a first and second time founder, like, really optimistic. And even before that, in my 20s and snowboarding, like, everything was possible and you should go after it all. And like, there was no hesitation to chase after any one of my dreams ever. And like to a detriment, I would say. But there's actually a lot of beauty in that. Actually, okay, so here's the answer. When I was like 23, after I read all the self-development books, I started to migrate towards Taoism, and I read the Tao of Pooh. You know, Winnie the Pooh? So somebody wrote a book how Winnie the Pooh is like a Taoist and teaching Taoism, and I'm actually reading it again, just like the last couple of weeks. And it's reminding me, as you're reading some of the passages in the book, it's reminding me of the time I read that passage when I was like 23. And it's weird, like I'm being transported back into the mentality of that 23-year-old. I can actually see through my eyes as that 23-year-old, like physically through my eyes. I'm remembering where I read that book and what I was doing then, what I looked like and how I thought and what kind of things I worried about. It's all rushing back from 26 years ago. And I was like, oh yeah, I was like crazy optimistic and always happy. And I'm just kind of becoming that again. And the cynicism is just kind of washing away. It's cool. Yeah, it's fun.
Oh, sounds incredible. So, I mean, when you say, you know, I'm entering my next chapter as kind of a founder whisperer, the other change, though, is that the other 2 chapters was you looking back and saying, okay, there's a chapter. So maybe you're being a little deterministic by saying, okay, this chapter is going to look like this.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
Are there new things opening up besides that? Besides you just kind of, you know, coaching and sharing your experience with founders? Is there any ventures that you're looking at? Any areas of technology where you're still seeing peaks and valleys and you're saying, okay, this stuff is starting to max out. Maybe let's pay attention to something new?
Yeah, I think I'm still developing this hypothesis, but I do think that technology is peaking in a way. I think I could make a compelling argument that technology is peaking. And that sounds weird because I know it's going to keep going. And there will probably be new explosive areas that become bubbles like the way AI has. And before that, self-driving cars. And before that, telematics. And before that, smartphones and so on. You actually can plot a chart for technology. And if you know enough about the Lego pieces, you can predict where it's going. And if you want to get really into it, read the founder of Wired Magazine's book, What Technology Wants by Kevin Kelly. It'll blow your mind. It was written in 2006. It'll blow your mind. It's pretty freaky. So yes, technology is going to keep going, but I think it's also peaking. And I don't mean that it won't keep evolving and growing. I mean that the rush, the gold rush for making money in technology is sort of dying off. And I think venture capital is really struggling with this. And so because of that, I don't know if I would start another technology company. Yeah. So we're looking at a drink company right now. Actually, that's another little side project, is building a non-alcoholic drink company. And I'm not going to unpack the details of that because I don't want to give it away. But, you know, that's nothing to do with technology.
Yeah. Well, there are some other observations actually being made out there as well, where when the money in tech, especially for investment, was more free-flowing, I mean, frankly speaking, you did have a lot more like bullshit startups, right? Like we're going to, you know, optimize this random thing, or we're going to, you know, create a new way of doing some, you know, weird thing for productivity or whatever.
Yeah. A lot of things that were features that shouldn't have been companies.
Totally.
They're a feature, maybe they're a product, but they're not a company.
Yeah. Or, you know, maybe a delightful sort of like, you know, toy almost, but try to turn it into a whole thing. Yeah. And what I've been hearing a lot about is that as, you know, there's a lot more consolidation happening, a lot more downward pressure economically, that actually even in tech spaces, people are getting back to fundamentals, right? So drink company, I'd argue food and beverage, right? Of like nutrition, how are we feeding ourselves, you know, energy, transportation, communication, like getting, you know, back to the fundamentals of what are the things that are actually going to make an impact, right? Yeah. Because technology, I think for a while, I'm actually realizing now that I agree with you, because I was going to start off by disagreeing, was that I think within itself, you know, the chip tech, the software, that's becoming more and more advanced and will continue to. But the peak is probably how much it's impacting our day-to-day experience, right?
Yes, exactly.
You know, like, you know, I think smartphones are an example of like in their form, how much better could this bloody thing get?
We can make it fold.
Yeah. Well, amazing.
So what?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You know, I shudder to read the next camera spec. Like really, like how much
100 megapixels.
Yeah. Like when I'm looking at this thing, how much better could it get? So on the impact to society, impact to life, I definitely feel that. I think there's peaks showing up for sure.
Yeah.
While within itself, the tech is getting more and more advanced. But I kind of appreciate the fact that, some amount of, I guess, like it's not fully austere. It's not fully, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's not that there isn't capital free flowing, but there is enough restriction now that's pushing people to focus more on the fundamentals again, right?
Yeah.
And
how much is it really going to benefit society? How needed is it really? That's the biggest mistake I think so many founders make, is they just don't fully understand the need they're solving, and that it's big enough. Yeah. And therefore, like, does it deserve to exist? Because lots of startups don't deserve to exist.
So what would be, I'm coming to you as a startup founder. Okay. What would be your first thing that you would say to me, both either as advice or inspiration, as a startup founder with an idea?
Man, that totally depends on what you're doing and what resources you've got. And yeah, like the gentleman I was just with for an hour before this meeting, he comes from urban planning. He's developing a product that moves things from A to B. And he's been able to develop prototypes on his own with some of his own money. He got to a point where he can't get a prototype good enough to put it in the hands of customers, so he needs to raise a bit of money. So that constraint there immediately defines his next step. Now, if he could get some product market fit with a prototype on his own, that would totally change his capital strategy, which would change the look of his cap table in the beginning, which would change how he develops his seed and Series A, might influence the desire for an early exit versus an IPO, which affects the timelines, which affects who he looks for first and second rounds of capital. Like, it all depends. Also the market he's in and what the competitors are like, how much he can leverage his position now to bring in that first capital or get the first customer. Like, if you can get customer before you get capital, oh my God, you should do that. You should kill yourself to try to do that. But you may not have the constraints to do that. So that would change my advice. Yeah. It's quite a complex beast of organic components that determine, the initial go-to-market strategy. And every one of them is just so different, which is actually probably why it's so fun and interesting all the time.
What are you most excited about right now?
My future. And, you said, oh, well, your third chapter may not be how you think it'll look. It never is. When I finished with Mojio, I didn't know I was going to be in the motorcycle industry. But when I don't know, it was like 2021 or something, and we had a working prototype, and I'm coming back from the racetrack in Southern California, and I look at my vision board from 2008, which was all about electric cars and making the world a greener place. There was an electric motorbike on it from a company called Vectrix, and it was just a bike I wanted. And then I looked, and then the Mission motorcycle that I was so horny for in 2012, 13, 14, 15, we acquired that company. We acquired the assets of Mission Motors. Like, you don't see how your future is going to unfold. You have a lighthouse out there, a beacon that you go towards. It's some murky idea. It's pretty nebulous, right? But you have to have a vision, and a vision's not crystal clear. It's murky and nebulous, but you go towards it, and it unfolds. And I think oftentimes it's much bigger than you think it's going to be. And that's what's exciting. That's what I'm most excited about.
Incredible. So Jay, whether it's to seek your advice and your experience or learn about what you're going to do next, where should people go if they want to learn more about Jay Giraud and what you're going to do next?
Well, I'm going to start posting fairly prolifically on my Instagram at Jay Giraud and on LinkedIn and maybe on X. We'll see. I hate that platform. Instagram and LinkedIn mainly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in, man. Really appreciate you spending the time with us.
Yeah, it was a good conversation. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Well, hopefully we've given you a lot to think about. That was High Agency. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.